Oh.
Looks like we still have a few folks in the waiting room. This is Mark with the League of Oregon Cities. We'll get started here in just a minute or two. All right, I think everybody's in. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Garst. I'm the League of Oregon Cities lobbyist for tax, finance, and economic development. You all have signed on to a call today, a special presentation to have a conversation with Business Oregon, the state's economic development agency. We have a good program for you. I think we're going to try and focus on looking forward, what we might be able to see as far as business assistance and economic recovery for the state of Oregon coming out of this COVID crisis. I'll say that this call was the idea of our executive director, Mike Cully. Mike, talks to you guys all the time, and one of the number one things that we hear is about concerns about businesses. And so Mike thought it would be very helpful if we could get a call together and kind of walk through some of these issues. I think that, everybody recognizes that, the COVID pandemic is a health crisis, but it's not just that, it's also an economic catastrophe. And, the league has been very focused on both issues, but I think that, for cities, we've really been on the front line of the economic side of this thing. I remember back in April that we had already seen 20 or 30 cities stand up business support programs before there was even such a thing as coronavirus relief fund money. And you guys were looking at budget problems. You were seeing your lodging taxes tank. You were seeing a certain reduction in gas tax. You were looking at fee decreases. And despite all of that, you guys dug deep and came up with money, out of your limited budgets for businesses. And I know that, your residents appreciate that, your businesses appreciate that. What we want is when we come out of this thing for everybody to still be able to find a job. And so that's really what this call is about today. For the league, we go through our legislative priority process. We have committees that push forward concepts, and then we send out a ballot, and all of you all vote on what our priorities are going to be for the session. This upcoming session, our number 2 priority is COVID economic relief. And that's going to take a couple different forms. It's not just businesses, it's also workers. On the worker side, cities have been standing up programs for utility assistance. And we're going to be working with the legislature to try and get some more money for utility assistance. We have LIHEAP right now that deals with like heating, gas, electric, but it doesn't deal with water. And so we'd like to see some money dedicated to that. That's Tracy Rutten with our office has been working on that. Ariel Nelson has been working a ton on the rent issue and trying to make sure that we can keep people in their houses, especially now that it's getting cold and unemployment's drying up. So, she's really been working on those issues. But this is kind of on the other side today. This is on the business side, the employer side. And a lot of the work that we've been doing along those lines really works with 2 organizations. So we work a lot with OEDA, which is the Oregon Economic Development Association. We have a board position with OEDA. And, we do regular meetings. We work with their legislative committee on concepts to keep businesses strong. But then our other major partner is Business Oregon. And, I took a look at my calendar in the last month here. I've done 15 hours of meetings with Business Oregon. We've been very involved. They've been kind enough to let us participate in steering group meetings on studies that they're doing. They've involved us in economic recovery planning and, kind of looking at how we come out of this COVID catastrophe and doing some planning around that. They involve us a lot in the CDBG program, which we're going to be talking about today. So really one of our top partners in trying to, manage the economic effects of this catastrophe. And then just looking at the, long-term economic issues for Oregon, even outside of COVID. So cannot say enough about these folks. Today on our agenda, we're gonna, like I said, focus on the future. So what money's coming, what money's gonna be coming down the pipe. There have been some ups and downs with programs that have been out there. We all know that, but really let's look forward and try and think about, what's coming down the road. Along those lines, we're going to talk about some money that's going to be available in the Community Development Block Grant Program. We're going to talk about some county money that's out there right now and how much of that might be left. We're going to talk about a teeny little bit of money that might be left in CDFIs. I don't think that there's much there anymore. I looked at the website a week ago and there was maybe Lane County had some money, but I looked today and it looks like maybe it's just grant. And then we're going to look at what state and federal aid might be coming, including a little discussion of the governor's budget, hopefully. And then we'll be opening it up at the end for a big Q&A. But along the way, if you have questions, we certainly want to hear them. And we'll try and have a moment after each of the topics to open it up to questions. But you're always welcome to put questions into the chat, and we'll try and keep an eye on those. Special thanks today to Julie Oki with the League of Oregon Cities for running the call and kind of trying to keep things organized here. But that's what we have up for you today. So introductions, again, I'm Mark Arst. I'm the League of Oregon Cities lobbyist for tax, finance, and economic development. With us, we have Chris Cummings. He's the acting executive director of Business Oregon. He came in as the assistant director in February of 2016. Chris is from the East Coast originally. We'll forgive him for that. I'm from Illinois, actually, and everybody always says I'm from back east, but Chris is really from back east. And oddly enough, he is a Saints fan, I know, because I sometimes catch him in his baseball cap here and there. We have Fumi Shat. Fumi is the program and policy coordinator for the Community Development Block Grant Program. Previously, she was the regional manager for the agency, working directly with cities and counties within Southern Oregon area. She's got over 20 years of public and private sector, and she's currently the lead on the CDBG program. And I have to say, I work with Fumi all the time. We look at applications. When you guys send in your applications, we get to take a swing at those, and Fumi's a big help there. We work on the method of distribution for CDBG and kind of look at what CDBG is going to look like going forward. And I just have to say, what I really appreciate about Fumi is that, the federal program has so many restrictions on it, but Fumi is really not a no person. She's a no but. So she's always looking for that way to get a project to possibly be able to be, fall within those really strict federal standards that we have. Finally, we have Ed Tabor with us. Ed is the program and incentives manager over at Business Oregon. He's been in that role for a little over a year and a half, but he's been with the agency for over 5 years, and he's a Duck, and also he is a Oregon native. So at least we've got one of those on the call. So everybody, I really appreciate Business Oregon. I really appreciate you guys showing up. And Chris, I would love for you to kick us off here. And I think that our first topic is CDBG, but if you have some thoughts before that, we'd be very happy to hear them.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody for allowing me to speak today. I'm happy to do this today or at any time in the future that you feel you need information. Of course, you can always contact me or anybody from our department directly. I do want to thank you all for the tremendous work that you're doing. I know that I get my fair share of phone calls from people who it's disheartening. They're backed into a corner. They need assistance. They're trying to figure out how to get it. There are a number of grant programs, loan programs, et cetera, around the state, and they're not sure where to go. And I know that you all are on the front line and they're your neighbors and they're calling you. And I can imagine how difficult that is from a local level, having to work through that. So I appreciate all that you're doing. I just want to let you know, make sure you know that. Today, we are going to talk about CDBG and some of the other topics that Mark had mentioned. CDBG is a community development block grant program that we have that is awarded to us to be able to give out to cities and counties from HUD, from the federal HUD department, or Housing Urban, what is it, Fumi? I'm going to ask you to chime in because I think I'm in front of people, so I'm getting shy here.
It's Housing and Urban Development Department.
Yeah, I knew that. So thank you. We will talk about that. But before we go into that, we have heard, and it's unfortunate when we have an emergency, sometimes you haven't done certain things and you go through a process and you learn about it. And ideally, we never have a pandemic again that we have to use what we've learned on. So we have heard from many of you and businesses and other stakeholders about how we can improve how we get money out the door in short times for these business grants and so on. So rest assured that you're welcome to share things that you've heard with us, but rest assured we're not taking that information and sitting on it, assuming that there may be actually another round of funding that we have to work with all of you and your businesses on. We will improve as we move forward in all aspects of our work. But getting into CDBG, and if you would, Julie, please open up that presentation. It's a few slides here. It's not 100 slides. The primary purpose of me presenting this information to you as it gets open and we go through it is to make sure that you know it's there, right? The first barrier for any of this, for our businesses getting grants, for communities getting grants, for states getting access to money, is to know it exists. And we can give you some details on this program today. I don't know that we'll be able to answer every question in detail, depending on time, but we want to make sure that you know it exists and that you know to reach out to us, the Business Oregon, ideally through your regional development officer. If you don't know who those folks are, Mark and I and our team can get the information out in a follow-up email. It's all available on the internet, and we'll make sure that you know who you should be contacting in case you want more information on this. But with community, we'll just say CDBG, so I don't have to go through the whole name every time. The state runs an annual program where we fund things from community development block grant money, such as water infrastructure, business grants, micro enterprise programs, housing rehabilitation, and so on. Because we run that program and we're the contact with HUD, we also get money. We receive money for COVID CDBG, we'll just call it. As you can see, its official title there is CDBG CV. Titles are titles. We'll know what you're talking about when you contact us for the need that you have. But with that, we've received we will have received here soon 3 rounds of funding. Today, we have open round 1. This money from CDBG, as I mentioned before, is only available for counties and cities to apply for. Now, there's a little nuance here. At the moment, only what we call non-entitlement cities and counties can apply for this money. So Fumi, we can touch on the list of who the entitlements are, because that's easier than calling out all the non-entitlements, and let you know whether you qualify or not at the moment. After 6 months' time, if all this money is not awarded to non-entitlement cities, then the entitlement cities and counties will be eligible. But before Fumi calls all that out, we'll go through some of this. And just to give you a general idea, most of rural Oregon is non-entitlement. So most of you probably on this call in smaller cities and less populated counties are eligible for this money. So Julie, if you would hit the next slide, please. So we have right now, there's a little screen here in my way, so I'm sorry I can't see it. Let me move this a little bit. Funds available, as you can see, a little over $5 million. We have those available for 3 pots of money, which we're going to get into here in a minute. But the application's open right now. As you can see, November 20th it started, and it ends on May 20th, 2021. We will have more, as I mentioned, than this round 1 of $5 million available as we move forward here. And those funds will be open up as they become available. Next slide, please. So we right now have it broken into 3 different areas of eligible projects. And that's what I want to get out to you, because I know there's a lot of money out there available, and there's a lot of different places to get it from, and a lot of different overlapping programs. This is money we have available now that you can access. It is grant money, so it's not repayable. Of course, unless you don't spend it, then of course that's a different story, but you will spend it if you apply for this and get the money. So the first area you can see here on the left of the screen under the column COVID-19 impact assistance, where we put available a little over $2 million for the types of projects listed in the type area. So if you need assistance for food bank locally, childcare assistance, distance learning for low to moderate income families, public facility improvements, special economic development, public services, and so on. There are funds available now for that as they relate to COVID-19. This is not an all-inclusive list. So what we need to do, if you want to see from us, do we have funds available for your community? What can I use the funds for? It's really best to reach out to one of our staff and tell us your need. A lot of times communities come to us and they say, I want to know what money you have. And we have over 70 programs in the department. So sometimes it's best to say, what do you need? What do you need? Let us figure it out for you so you don't have to, spend all your time figuring which little hole you fit into. And then we can, tell you, here's the funding that we can offer you. So this money, as I said, is available now and today. And I know many of you are getting money for your local food bank. Some of you may be saying, well, I'm the city. I don't run the food bank. It's a local nonprofit that runs the food bank. That's okay. You as the city can have a partnership with the local nonprofit. And Fumi, you're just going to have to interrupt if I'm wrong here. And you can apply for this money and pass it through to the local nonprofit. So that's something that I think many communities don't really know about CDBG, is that your city may say, I don't do these things. I'm not in distance learning. I'm not buying the food for the food bank. That's where we need you to think maybe a little bit differently than we normally do at the state level, and say, okay, who can I partner with locally to make sure that my citizens get the assistance they need? The other area that's available right now is emergency small business, and you can read the title yourself. It's for small businesses. It's to be able to help, as you can read, local businesses get some grant funding, to be ready to be able to come out of the crisis, to work with the crisis, avoid job losses, and so on. So you can use this money to set up a local fund yourself for small business grants. And that you would also touch base with us. We'll see what you want to do, and we'll try and fit your peg into or your square peg into our round hole, and make sure that you can have some money yourselves for this. Now I realize, like I had said, and Mark had said, many of you stood up grant programs on your own and/or loan programs. We had grant and/or loan programs we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But we all know on this call, and I think obviously the world knows, is that COVID, even though we have a vaccine, is not going away tomorrow. And our businesses are closed, and they can use every bit of help that we can afford them as the state and local communities. So again, here, you may say, I'm a small city, I don't have the ability to set up a grant program. Well, there's probably somebody you can partner with that can help you administer that grant program. And if you don't know who they are, our staff can help you find them. There are different organizations, whether it's local to your community or that maybe in a different area of the state, that are more than willing to come help with your community to distribute these grants and run the program. So don't think that for a minute that there's not resources. This is all about how we can connect you with what you need. And you need to, if there's something, we need to hear what it is so we can try to make sure that we can get it to you. So down here, just on some specifics, you can see on the bottom there, all activities must be completed and the project complete within 12 months of the contract execution. The reason I call that out, first of all, it has to be done in 12 months. But the second reason is that CDBG, many of you may have heard or worked with CDBG in the past and have heard, oh my gosh, there's a lot of paperwork to that. It's really a hassle. How do I do that? Fumi and the team have made it as simple as possible, particularly for this emergency fund. We also have the resources internally to make sure that we can find a way to help you administer the program. Like, we're not going to come to your city and sit down and fill out the checks, but we are able to help you make sure you fill out the paperwork correctly, get whatever information you need to us, remind you when it's due, so on and so forth, and take you through the steps. Next slide, please. So one program we just released as we received clearance from HUD is Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Of course, around the state, there's much rental assistance available for housing. We know that it's not sufficient. We also have been hearing lately that the federal government will be, assuming we get another stimulus, putting money into rental assistance programs, probably again, not sufficient. And we want to make sure that this money gets out to those communities that aren't necessarily at the forefront, right? We love Portland. I love Portland. Portland it draws a lot of attention, but some of our small communities around the state, people are definitely struggling with meeting rent, particularly for those who've been laid off for various reasons that we all know about. So this is another program where you need to partner with a local organization. And some of those organizations or housing assistance organizations around the state may be contacting you as a city or city government to see if you'll partner with them. And that may be cumbersome sometimes because of the administration involved, but we can help you with that as well. Or you can talk to the local organization that you're partnering with to help you with that. The important part here is how do we get the money into the hands of the people who need it, who are the people that need to stay in their homes throughout this pandemic until our businesses can start hiring people again to full speed. So there's some, you can go down the list here. There's community must complete a rent reasonable study to determine local FMR and so on. I don't want to get too far in, unless somebody has a question for us, I don't want to get too far into the details with that, because what I want to be able to do is ideally you all call and say, I'm interested in that, or you tell your staff back in the office, or you tell your fellow city councilwoman back at the city that these programs are available for our communities. And then we'll work with whoever you send to us to ask those questions to make sure that we can make it as smooth as possible to get you funds you need for your local community. So with that, I'm just going to check in with Ed and Fumi here to see if there's anything specific, but not too specific, that we want to call out so that our communities here know what's available with them for them with this community development block grant program.
So one thing that I just want to emphasize is this is the first one of our 3 different opportunities throughout the year and throughout until up to 2022. The beauty of the CDBG community, the CDBG CV program is we are given time. We are given time to implement the funds up to September 2022. With that said, we're trying to set it up so that it is spread out very evenly, understanding that there are some priorities that communities are now focusing to pursue, and especially like the previous one we just recently finished is the coronavirus response fund that needs to be completed by December 30th of this year. So we do encourage for communities to look at the program and set a partnership, identify the partners that has experience in handling either the small business micro enterprise funding assistance, or the food bank, or the broadband for the distance learning assistance. Usually the partnership will be either with the school district or nonprofit that would assist in that arena, and talk to our regional development officer, and we will be working in and do the project development alongside with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Fumi. I will, Mark, if we may, I see some chat questions here.
I'll read those. Do you want me to go ahead, or Ed, did you have anything to add before we?
No, all I was gonna add was that, as Chris said, if you got a need, reach out and ask, and the RPMs and our staff and myself and Fumi, we're happy to answer any questions that people have. Don't know where to start, we can get everybody started in the right direction and offer assistance that way. So.
So I'll just say, we're talking today about what is just the first round of this. And I think, Fumi just kind of laid it out there. There are going to be 3 rounds of this coronavirus related CDBG. So this may not sound like a tremendous amount of money, but ultimately we're looking at $26 million that's been allocated to the state. And we expect that, 24.5 or more will actually go out to cities and counties. The split that Business Oregon is working from is 30% for the emergency rental assistance, 30% for the COVID-19 impact assistance, and then the balance 40% for small business. So that ultimately is going to be almost $10 million that'll be available for small business assistance. One question that I had on this, Chris or Fumi, is there any required match from local governments for this CDBG program?
So I'm about 98% sure, but I'm going to let Fumi answer so I get 100%.
There is no local required local match from
Okay.
the local. It's just a matter of having the project that's ready to proceed. That's a big deal. Because this program comes with a restriction of timing. So therefore, the earlier that a project is well developed together to ensure that all components of the project is ready to implement, those are a big component that we want to make sure to have a head start to work with the communities.
Okay, and so we'll kind of go through a couple of the questions from the chat there. So City of Malin, okay, that just moved it. City of Malin has been approved with, has concerned citizens worried about students failing in our schools distance learning. I know this is a problem across the state. They've asked if the city could help with any funding to provide a space and tutors to assist those students. A big concern is seniors failing and not being able to graduate this next year. Is there grant funding that the city could get for those purposes? So getting some space together maybe to do distance learning, maybe bringing in tutors.
I have to defer to Fumi on that one because the eligible activities from CDBG are so broad that Fumi, you have to know more about that than I do.
Right. The context of the CDBG CV are driven for the low moderate income families. In an example of such implementation is in the context of childcare services, in which a community could stand up a what you call the public service program, in which if you have a low income family and need assistance, then to have them enroll to an existing childcare CDL mixed tutor centers that would allow the kids to have an additional care, and especially in regards of the curriculum of studies. The CDBG program may do that, but one thing that we need to keep a look at, that the objective, we're trying to complete a national objective of those activities that are benefiting low moderate income families.
So I think it sounds like, Fumi, the answer is there may be a way to get to it, but perhaps not the whole picture. And if we could provide part of the funding, and then the community could find the other part of the funding, which we're happy to relay our knowledge on where that might be able to come from. There may be a project here that we could work.
Okay, so next question we have is Tom, and he asks about equal distributions of available funds. And, I'll say we sat in on the IFA board, and this was definitely a concern that they had as well. And I'm guessing, what you're talking about is that kind of rural urban split. And so I think that the way that you see it laid out is what they did to try and address that issue. So like Chris said, there's going to be a 6-month period here where non-entitlement jurisdictions are allowed to apply first. And then what the board discussed was that they had some concerns that maybe the smaller cities didn't have as robust of a staff and wouldn't be able to stand up these applications as quickly as larger cities. And so basically they're giving you a head start, okay, for the smaller guys. And then there will be money left over, I'm pretty certain, at least in some of these buckets, and then that money will be available to everybody. So so that was how they sought to address it. But aside from that, this is a first come, first serve program. Is that right? Yeah, Fumi's nodding yes. So it's incumbent on you to make sure that distribution happens the way you want to see it happen. So that's why we're having this call today. We're trying to get folks to get those applications in. The next question that we have is there a limit to the number of CDBG grants a city may have open at one time? I don't know the answer to that one.
Fumi?
So within the, we have a regular annual allocation funds. It is governed under our current method of distribution. If you have a project within the annual allocation, there is a requirement that restricts the amount of projects that you are going to handle. In regards to our community development program for COVID-19 related activities, there is no limitation. However, I would like to remind you to look into your local capacity. CDBG comes with the same amount of requirements, the same amount of administrative requirements with any normal federally funded program. Therefore, you may have several projects of CDBG CV funded going on, but if your capacity is going to be burdening your internal capacity, I would recommend you to look into and prioritize it.
And along those lines, if you were, it sounds like somebody asking this question has some, obviously a CDBG grant right now going on. There's other ways to work projects too. Perhaps you're a small city, a very small city, and maybe you're in a county where there are a number of very small cities. You may want to get together and talk to the county about applying, and then help, them taking on that administrative portion of the process and program, and then figuring out how to work with them, or a couple communities getting together so that you can share the, I was about to say share the pain, but I let it out anyway. So you can share the administrative burden with working through these programs. I think oftentimes as cities, I used to work in city government, we would think of, okay, what can I do for my city? And that's where I'm elected or I'm getting paid by. But some of the better programs we were able to work on generally involved multiple jurisdictions that partnered with us. So we could have some sort of team to work through things. And it sounds like, Mark, before you get to the next question, that there was a typo Mr. Runyon had pointed out, June 21 or June 22. Can you see that, Fumi?
Yeah, that is not a typo. So that is for, remember, this is for CV1 only. And the 6 months period for the CV1 rental assistance program will end June 2021. And then after that, there will be another CV2 round that will be released. And
that CV2 round is going to be in another $3 million. And then there's a round 3 that's going to be an additional $2.1 million. So we're going to try and, make this money last, but that's the plan right now.
And circling back to, because the question's on the table, to clarify, it said, Fumi, you had indicated that distance learning portion of the grant money is only for low to moderate income families. And I believe that to be correct, yes?
Correct.
And that's a limitation across the CDBG program generally. So this is, one of the federal limitations that HUD puts in place. This is not a Business Oregon decision, but this is one of the limitations of that money, is that it needs to help low and moderate income communities. So another question we have is, can all this administrative information be shared with folks on this call? So first thing I'm going to do is copy and paste into the chat the link for the Business Oregon CDBG page. And on there, you will find a wealth of information, I think. And, you know, we also got a question specifically, I got it over text of could we share the PowerPoint on the League of Cities website, and we'll certainly put, yeah, I see Chris nodding, so we'll go ahead and make sure that we make that available to you as well. Also, this call is being recorded, and so we'll present this, or we'll make sure that you have access to the call as well. So let's go, I want to get back to where I was here in the questions. Okay, we already got that one. Do cities need to meet the LMI index to qualify? That's a little more specific than the general question. Is that, Fumi, do you have anything more on how that LMI requirement works?
Yeah, so that depends on the type of activity that city is interested to pursue. So if you are interested to pursue small business micro enterprise assistance, the city is not, it doesn't have to meet the 51% low moderate income LMI, but because you are trying to satisfy the low moderate income clientele, so basically you would have to check the income information of those who you were assisting, is to help the small businesses that is trying to retain LMI jobs, or try to create LMI jobs, or to assist low moderate income micro enterprise within the jurisdiction. If you're talking about the COVID-19 impact assistance, let's say that you are assisting for the childcare assistance, it all depends on what you're trying to do. There are some communities that says we see the needs of the local kids, because they couldn't get a childcare service in the area because there's no childcare provider that is ready to open as yet. And the city or the county is interested to create a new program to help to send up a new childcare /CDL or education program in the area. Since you are creating a new program, the requirement means that the program needs to satisfy at least 51% low moderate income family. With that said, it is the limitations, 51% low moderate income family needs to be served within that center. That gives the opportunity for 49% of non-low moderate income family to be also served in the center. The key of this whole deal is tracking them, documenting them appropriately. Therefore, depending on the type of the program, the LMI requirement is sometimes would require the area wide, but most of the time for the COVID-19 is not.
Okay, and Susie Marston says that she's probably going to be reaching out to have a conversation with you guys about this, and you can certainly reach out to me, and I can get you the correct contact information. You can we'll make sure that information, that we have a contact for you at Business Oregon. Next question is, if a school is a Title I school, would the school qualify for the grant to help with distance learning? Is that affected, or do you really have to look at that LMI?
Right. You look at the LMI. Okay. Yes. So it doesn't really matter what the level of the school itself. Again, if you are within the non-entitlement areas and you are partnering with your school district and you identify that there are some needs, especially for the low moderate income families, to help sponsor or to help subsidize the availability of like hotspots or enable internet access so that their kids can actually enroll into the CDL program. That's something that CDBG would be able to help. One thing we need to make sure we be very careful. All of CARES Act funded is really big on the making sure that there is no duplication of benefit. So do work with us to ensure that this is being looked at very carefully, so there won't be any risk of duplication benefit, especially out there right now. There are other fundings that comes in play from different agencies and for many different varieties of topic that might converge together into a project.
Okay, so Julie, if I understand correctly, now if someone wanted to ask a question, they could just raise their hand. Is that right? And we would be able to have a question.
Yes, they can, in the participants tab, if you mouse over, I believe you can raise your hand or you can do it.
I think it says asks to unmute. Is that maybe the what they would be asking, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they can try to find where it is.
So if anybody has another question that they'd like to ask here on CDBG before we move on, I know it sounds complicated, and it is not. These are federal requirements, and so it is a little complicated. But again, I want you to know that Business Oregon will work with you to help kind of perfect your application and to make sure that you guys are dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Fumi she's great at this, and Raina, who also who works with her on this, and they really can we can get you there if you want to make use of these programs. And so please don't be discouraged by the fact that these programs are a little complicated. Folks, get this done. You can get this done, and Business Oregon will help you to make sure that that this program works. So do we have anybody with any questions before we move on? Chris, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that, and I'm happy to take questions, of course, and I appreciate what you just said, Mark. The one thing I want to make clear is that I don't want to be the director who shows up here and says, we have grant money for all of you and you'll love it, and it's simple. It takes some work, and on all of our sides, right? But it is important for our communities, as that's why you're in the service that you're in, to make sure that we can get the assistance needed to the people that we serve. The big thing I want to leave you with, at least on CDBG, and again, ask questions if you'd like, is that the answer is no unless you ask. So, I mean, that sounds pretty simple, right? But unless you call and ask us or talk to somebody or send an email or however you want to do it, the answer for or even apply, the answer is no. There is no money for you. So you have to take one of those steps as a community to be able to access this particular money. We're not going to be able to show up and say, here, city of X, here's $100,000 when you didn't apply. Like some things have happened with CARES Act money. This is a little bit different.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anything. So I think that we will kind of move on our agenda here, if that's okay. So the next topic that I wanted to kind of discuss, we had at the League had made a real push to get some additional business money, well, some additional money for cities generally, but our expectation was that a lot of that money would have gone out for business assistance. And we were unsuccessful on that, but the legislature did give $55 million in money to counties. And we know that some counties have decided to kind of dole that out to individual cities. I think that Washington County is an example of a county that's done that. And then we also know that other counties have just been administering business assistance grant programs on their own. So Business Oregon has a list online, and I'll try and find you guys a link for that, of all the different county programs. And so you might take a look there and kind of see how those programs are going. And I was curious, Chris, if you or your folks had any thought. I know you guys don't directly administer those programs, but if you had any thoughts about that money that's out there.
No, I think we don't have a lot of thoughts on it, Mark, obviously, except, it's great that it's out there and somebody's getting access to it. The $55 million, for what it's worth, so you all know, it was not administered through our department. It went through the state's Department of Administrative Services, STAS. And they awarded it to the different counties based on population with a base number for each county, and then, you know, as it increased depending on the population of the county. It's the administration is in the hands of the county now. The state gave those counties some guidelines on how to administer it, but tried not to give too many guidelines, of course, or standards. And what we're trying to do through our regional development officers and other team members is keep track where those funds are being awarded. How does one access them? So Mark had mentioned it, we have a list on our webpage and we update it as soon as we find out when a new program is opened. I can tell you that as of last night, every county has signed their agreement with the state to accept the money. So as you can imagine, since the last county just signed last night, their program's probably not up and running yet. But I think most important, if you get questions from businesses, because this is some of the last state money, if you will, I know it's county money right at the second, so to speak, direct your businesses to our website. And I think it's on here, but in our website, we also have what we call the Business Navigator, where folks can go and find out all kinds of stuff. But there's also an 800 number, so people can, and an email, people can email us or call us and actually speak to like a real person, and we will answer their questions. Many of the emails and phone calls we're getting are not even about the grant funds. They're about other topics, but we're not passing those people off. We're working with other departments, as the governor has asked us to do, to get them the best answer we can for whatever topic they're calling. Now, if somebody were to call you, ask you about food bank money, the Navigator is probably not the best place to send everybody for. It's designed for businesses, but we are taking those questions that they have, those businesses, and answering them even when they don't necessarily pertain to something that we do. So I would ask you to, if you're not familiar how the program is set up in your county or where the link is for people to get access, send them to our website. If they have other questions about the changing, the most up-to-date standards from the governor with closures, they can call our Navigator as well, and we'll provide them with the necessary information they need.
Great, thanks, Chris. And is that money CRF money? Does that have to go out by December 30th as well?
That's correct. I think there's a bit of a nuance with that money. My understanding is it has to be awarded by December 30th and the money can go out after. It still needs to be for cost incurred from March to December 30th of 2020. So any county that has their money now, which is all of them, need to set up something quickly and take some actions.
Okay, thank you. So that is the long and the short of the county money there. And somebody put into the chat that Clackamas County, I think, was opening up tomorrow. So, you know, this is certainly something, if you've had businesses who haven't been able to access some of the previous rounds of funding, this is certainly something that you should be looking at. I would say that, you know, what we've seen over time is that the requirements on the businesses have become more and more relaxed with each program. So city programs at the very beginning had some pretty strict standards, and you know, those were imposed by the legislature through the emergency board. And we saw the CDFI programs come out slightly lower. We saw the Business Oregon program come out that was, you know, the one that was subscribed in 23 minutes that I think everybody's aware of. That had, you know, less requirements still. So you know, what we have seen is that over time, it's been easier for businesses to access these programs. And so it's possible that if someone received, you know, PPP and EIDL, they may have thought they can't get state money. Not true, right? Those standards have changed. And then even, you know, I've looked at a couple of the county programs, and it looks like even if you've received some state grant money, that you are maybe not prioritized, but you still might be eligible. So I think different counties have different standards, and you definitely will want to, you know, point your people in the right direction, and you know, and this is certainly a resource for them. The next one I wanted to talk about, and I think that I kind of missed the boat on this one. As of Wednesday, there was a little more CDFI money out there. I think that we were calling that round 4 money. But that money looks to be mostly gone unless you are in Grant County. Through Community Lending Works, I still see that they have a link up for Grant County on their website. Do you guys have any more update on that CDFI money?
Well, the update is that it's really all spoken for. We are receiving reports back from cities and CDFIs, right, and credit union CDFIs about their spending. Our direction that we've been given was to make sure it's all spent and out our door by the end of the year, December 30th. So we were able to take some funding from rounds, what we call rounds 1 through 3 that Mark alluded to, that were a little more restrictive, and move them into round 4, which was for the CDFIs to get them out. We moved them, Mark, to places that we knew could get the money out quickly. So even if that Grant County portal is open, it may be done today. So along with that, with those monies, we also had what we call round 5. Mark had mentioned the great demand that we had in 23 minutes, which of course we have lots of lessons learned there. But all of that money, the $20 million from that, should be in the hands of all the businesses that received it by Christmas. Most of it is out the door right now, and we're finishing up the last 5 million. We had to, there were so many applicants, and many people, I think you can all appreciate, many people are panicked, right? And they maybe didn't qualify and they still applied. So we had to move through all those applications and make sure they met the standards the e-board asked us to meet. So they should all have their money here very soon. The legislature's aware of how quickly that money went. And I suspect many of you are hearing from businesses, or have heard from businesses that were upset, right, that they didn't get these funds. $20 million does not go very far. It's going to be about 1,000 businesses. And there's well over 100,000 businesses in the state. And it's heart-wrenching, because I wish there were a way we could help everybody equally. And that hasn't occurred yet. Nobody's figured that one out. I do know there's some requests from us from the legislature if we feel there's more need for business assistance. And I don't know that there's anybody on this call that would say, no, there's no more need for business assistance. So we've relayed that information. And we'll see, they're meeting, they're constantly e-boards and next session coming and so on. But mostly right now, everybody is in the position of saying, how do we keep these folks afloat so that they can land in a fairly decent space once things start opening up again.
And I appreciate that, Chris. And you and I have had conversations about, what gaps still exist out there. And, what you shared was obviously, there's a lot of people who did not get any grant money and that needed it. And so that's an obvious gap. And then, the other one that you mentioned was traded sector, that there are some concerns there. And, when we heard that this morning, for those of you who were on our 10 o'clock call, Nate kind of spoke to that issue and said that in the traded sector, they'd seen, 15,000 jobs lost, 7.6% to our manufacturers who sell outside the state or outside of the country. And, Chris, I'm curious if you see anything that, that might be coming to help out those manufacturers or those trade sector businesses.
Thanks, Mark. I don't see anything, today, right? We're in the middle of special session, so I'm partly stuck on all those conversations going on. But we are working, as you alluded to earlier, with a recovery plan. And I think that's where we'll see some assistance in not just cash assistance, but maybe tax relief or what have you, come out of recommendations from that plan, which we'll want to have the discussions about traded sector. I think some of it is in the messaging right now that we hit some barriers, and that many people, when they think of manufacturing and traded sector, they think of Intel or Microsoft, right? And I think all of you know from being in city government that a lot of those businesses are this 5-person businesses, right? 5 employees or 20 employees, or the small manufacturers in your communities. those are also important because they bring outside money into your community, which then allows all of us to spend on restaurants and so on and so forth. So longer term, right now, short term, we want to make sure that as many businesses as we can keep open and standing in all sectors do remain so. But in the long term, we're going to want to give some attention to the traded sector so that we don't lose that potential job growth and income generation for your communities that they bring.
So, we're clearly into the just straight fortune telling prognostication at this point. We're just thinking about what additional money is going to be out there down the road possibly. And so, we've obviously been keeping an eye on the federal conversation that's been happening for our part. And, Mike discussed today just some terrific disappointment, that they weren't able to come to some agreement on assistance for state and local government. I don't want to characterize that stuff too much, but basically I think that, the Republicans really wanted liability reform. The Democrats really wanted money for state and local, and neither side got what they wanted. And that's so often how a compromise is reached, is that just nobody gets what they want. And so it's unfortunate. I don't know that NLC has completely put up the white flag. I know we're still looking for, any way that we might possibly be able to, have anything different happen, but that may have to wait for a future administration. But I will say that in the federal package, and again, who knows what's going to be in there, so you're not taking this to the bank, but there are some good things that are in there for businesses, certainly. The latest thing that I read is that there's a second round of the paycheck protection payments, and maybe as much as $300 million in subsidies for businesses. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that's directed, but there could be some that's available to, some of our Oregon businesses in that, certainly. So, that's a good thing. I think that they're talking about an extension of the unemployment benefits, probably something less than the $600 a week that we saw, obviously, but still something. They're, negotiating over a direct payment to folks, a check, for stimulus. So, all of those things add up, and there's some rental assistance in there as well, I think. So all those things add up, and, even if we don't get what we really need as far as assistance to local government, at least it's good to know that there's some money in there for businesses and for workers. And so I'm excited about that. Is there anything, else on that federal package, Chris, that you would point out?
I would just point out too, a great recession buster throughout history has been infrastructure investments. And at least what I saw on early indications were that there's money in there for broadband. There's money in the governor's budget for broadband. So everybody's interested in broadband, which makes sense. There's money in the federal stimulus for water, wastewater projects, and some transportation projects, airport projects, ground transportation and airport projects, fisheries, agriculture, and so on. So they're not, the fisheries and agriculture aren't necessarily infrastructure, they're not programs, but those infrastructure projects are important too. And it's hard to say to a community or a city, oh, you better get your plans updated by 3 weeks from now, because we all know that water and wastewater projects don't take that or don't get done that quickly. But the best that you can do to position and make sure your needs are up to date when you consider your systems or infrastructure would be ideal as this money starts coming forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge point. I've participated in, and I know some of our other, city leaders have participated in the infrastructure roundtable that you guys put together recently, which was a great exercise. There were some good ideas that came out of there, and I know you guys are taking some of those ideas to, to your commission, to the IFA board, I think that eventually we need to get some of those ideas in front of legislators, but a lot of work on how we can actually administer infrastructure projects. It can be so challenging, especially for smaller communities where they don't have dedicated staff. And, and at the federal level, when we were last back in DC in February, I know that was one of the top items on our list, was an infrastructure package, and looking at, what DeFazio's been talking about for quite some time. And maybe in a new administration will, that will become a priority, hopefully. And I agree, that is just, you know, when you talk about kind of digging yourself out for a recession, typically most economists would say that's the time for government to spend. And so, you know, it's possible that we could see something at the state level too. The speaker has said back in May, I think, that, you know, she would be interested in looking at some bonding for infrastructure, and we would love to see that happen here at the state level. So also something that we're very interested in. So as we kind of turn to the state a little bit, the governor's recommended budget came out. I'll tell the cliche that everybody knows: the governor proposes, the legislature disposes. So, you know, it's not a certainty that, you know, that everything in that budget's going to happen, but, you know, there was some good news in there for you guys, and maybe some challenges. I'll just say that, you know, I'll let you speak to some of the money that's in there, but I do want to mention one thing that's not in there that we noticed was there's not a lot of staffing for Business Oregon. The budget basically doubles, I think, and there's not too many positions. So that's something that the league will be working on. We want to make sure we don't set you guys up for failure with all this money to distribute and don't have the people to do it. So I won't force you to say that, but I'd be curious about some of the things that you saw in the governor's recommended budget that you could share with us.
Well, thanks, Mark, and thanks for not forcing me to say that. But yes, and noticing that, I appreciate it. Our budget, the governor's budget, does increase our budget, ours being Business Oregon's budget, by 50%, from $1 billion to $1.5 billion a biennium. Some of the key things that are in that budget are $100 million for broadband. Everybody knows, including the governor, because she's asked us for information on that $100 million will not solve our state's broadband programs. It will probably be over a number of years and bond sales until we reach the level where we say, oh, but we're happy. We'll never be done. It's like any other infrastructure. There is money in there for technical assistance for underrepresented businesses, and those businesses being historically underrepresented cultural groups and rural areas. So we have right now, as many of you know, the SBDCs around the state. This is another area to add expertise in consulting to local businesses that people can answer, whether it's in some of our more remote areas of the state or in different languages. So that's in the budget. There's money in the budget for some access to capital programs to open up the risk levels, if you will, for funds that we offer for businesses in different areas. There's funding in there for COVID, if any of you, not COVID, but certification, small minority owned businesses, for those firms to access for loans that may be a little more risk taking than other programs that we see. There's money in the budget for our normal work, SBDCs, and infrastructure such as Special Public Works Program, which is one of our flagship infrastructure program, if you will, because it's so diverse. $50 million for that. There's funding in there for brownfields. I doubt there's any person in this call that lives in a city that doesn't have a brownfield. Those are things that we'll be working on, it feels like, until eternity. But there's quite a bit of additional infrastructure money and some business programs that we see in the budget. I think what will help inform the budget as we move forward, of course, we have the governor's budget, and that's what I support. As we move forward and the legislature looks at different programs, what will help inform that is the recovery planning that Mark had mentioned earlier that we do, because we do know when we talk about traded sector and long-term recovery and infrastructure expenditures that help all of you and the state move forward, that will need to come up further. But the governor's made, normally our budget comes in, the governor's request at around where our budget is every 2 years, $1 billion. The governor's put much more emphasis into economic development and recovery, and hence that's why you see such a large increase. 50% is bigger increase than I've seen. the biggest increase I've seen in our budget recommended by the governor since I've been working here in this state. So.
Yeah, and it's a great, I mean, it's a really important acknowledgement of kind of the situation that we find ourselves in right now, as you know, as the rest of the country, but certainly Oregon businesses, we all know we're struggling. You know, looking forward to Monday, we have our special session, and I think that one of the things that's likely to come out of that is $600 million that's going to be dedicated to the emergency board. You know, that money won't all be distributed on Monday, obviously, but there's certainly been some signaling that that a portion of that money at least will be for business assistance, again, for rental assistance and, you know, some other priorities. And then some of that money will remain flexible so that the emergency board can do the work it's supposed to do, which is respond to emergencies. We also saw that, you know, there's some call outs to restaurants with the cocktails to go. So that'll be interesting. That's OLCC's area, not yours, obviously. And, you know, there's some acknowledgement about what landlords have given up during this crisis too, with the rent moratorium. And so there's going to be, you know, a fund for small landlords in particular. And, you know, there's some other proposals that are out there, maybe for an income tax credit, but, you know, certainly that's something else that the legislature is looking at related to business. And then they'll be doing some other stuff related to, you know, wildfires and some other issues that we've had. So any thoughts on the special session or?
I love special sessions.
Well, you're lucky.
We all
This is our third, right?
You know, specific to that, I don't know, because things develop quickly, have been developing quickly. What we know is that we were asked, what do we see as immediate short-term needs, next 3 months, right? We obviously, business assistance is what we say, right? So there's a need for that. We think there still will be. Also, to tie all that in, there's a need for more PPE that we're hearing about from the state. Some of you may be involved in what we're doing now by sending PPE out to different areas of the state for businesses. We're giving away masks and gloves and sanitation wipes and so on and so forth. And then a need to continue some of the work around the technical assistance providers that we have now under contract to help those businesses. A lot of the help comes in, you know, we all think, oh, you're a business, you've got to be great at running the backside accounting part of the business. And we're learning that a lot of people are great at their business, but they don't always have their paperwork ready or understand what paperwork they need. So a lot of it is, you know, the technical assistance is around that, so they can at least apply for loans and grants. But what we'll also see coming up here is that all these businesses have to do their taxes. So some of these technical assistance providers are going to be able to help and or hire accountants to help these businesses do their taxes and figure out how the forgiveness of the PPP and everything else is going to work. And you know, I can't figure that out right now. I would be going to an accountant. So anything we can do to save business money by not, you know, by providing them the assistance they can get is going to help keep them afloat. So that's what we're looking to do. And I think the legislature will probably be looking at those things, although, as you all know, I can't say 100% because I'm here at the department, not in the legislature. So.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about a lot of the issues that you just raised, I know, in the long session for sure. And we just have been swimming through bills that have been dropped here during the last couple of weeks legislative days that we've had. So there's going to be, I'm taking a week off at Christmas, but I think I'm just going to spend the whole week reading the bills. So so that I appreciate all of this. And, you know, we want to, we're kind of coming up on our time here, but we certainly want to have an opportunity for you folks to ask questions. So if anybody wants to, you know, raise a hand and ask a question, if you're not getting acknowledged, certainly put it in the chat that you're trying to get our attention here. There are, you know, 5 pages of faces here on the Zoom right now. But curious, any questions out there for Chris or his team? Oh, they might let you off easy. We'll see here what happens.
Oh, this never happens. But that might mean I explained everything. I doubt it.
It's the
as he was-
holiday season.
Yes. I see Mr. Kessler has a question, Mark.
Okay, can we, yeah, there we go, great. Go ahead. Oh, go, there you go.
We are looking to access some watershed property to protect our present security of water in our city. And of course, we'll have to acquire that land, and we're working right now with the conservation fund to help us kind of with a bridge. But I was wondering, do the grants that you have cover anything like that of acquiring securing water for the future of the city?
And great question. And I don't know if which city do you represent,
Port
please?
Orford.
Oh, Port Orford. We may actually be speaking with your staff. Ed popped his screen back on because he heard that coming. So Ed, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so there has been some discussions about your specific project within the agency as well. One of the concerns that often comes up is the looking for grants in this particular situation. From what I understand, certainly loans are certainly available, and everyone obviously would prefer a grant. There's not specific grants available for that purpose. But there are loans and there is financing available for it, but there aren't any actual grants that would cover that in its entirety.
Now, I think you mentioned a wastewater infrastructure. Are there grants for wastewater infrastructure improvements?
There are grants for wastewater infrastructure improvement under our water wastewater program. Depends also on the city's demographics as far as revenue and some other criteria, but that there are grants available for wastewater improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to talk to Tracy Rutten also with the League of Oregon Cities if you haven't already. She is just a wealth of information on all things water and wastewater, and definitely want to reach out to
Mark,
her.
could you give me her name again? I got Tracy
Rutten, Rutten.
Okay, I got that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple questions in the chat. Any assistance for landlords other than income tax credits? Oh, yeah. So in the chat here, we have any assistance for landlords other than income tax credits? Yes, we think that there's going to be some money that's going to be set aside. Landlords will be able to apply basically to a fund. I think that it'll take a coordination with their tenant, and then they should be able to get paid for back rent. But keep an eye on that. As Chris alluded to, that forgiving a debt is sometimes taxable. So keep an eye on that. Any program for water utility fee assistance? We're working on that in the long session. We're going to be looking at that, like I discussed. That's one of the league's top 6 priorities. And then Business Oregon folks, do we have anything like that utility rate assistance?
We've been having the same discussions with you, of course, and SDAO and others, knowing that, and Tracy, knowing that there's a demand for it, but there's no program that we have or we're aware of right now for that.
Okay. And then there's a comment, also hopefully funding opportunities coming for water infrastructure under the new administration. And yeah, we're all hoping for a big infrastructure package, and we'll see kind of where that goes. But again, that is, Oregon could also do some capital bonding. So we'll see kind of where those conversations go.
For sure. And Mark, just because I can't resist, and we were asked the question, Ed, what's our interest rate right now on those loans? What's our interest rate?
They're below 2%.
Right. And some projects
as low as 1%.
Yeah. And we can go out 25, 30 years on loans. So I just have to put that plug in there because the economy, it may not be great, but interest rates are low. So as Mark had said before, now's the time to invest in those things because of the cost of money, partly.
So here's another question. In Curry County, CCD administered the Small Business Grant Program. Would that be somebody the city could partner with to apply for the CDBG funds for additional small business grants. And I see Fumi clicked back on. Fumi?
Most definitely, yes. We have been working with CCD business for a while. They're one of our strongest partners.
And who is CCD?
CCD, Coos Curry Douglas Business Inc. is a, I think, the regional economic development organizations for the Southern Coastal area.
All right, very helpful. Anybody else have a question? You've got the Chief Economic Development Officer for the state of Oregon on the call here.
No pressure. Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Mark, if I may just finish, you and the league and Mike and Tracy, you've been fabulous partners. This money and all money and programs that we have in our department is not for us to hide and you know, hoard anywhere. That's not our job. Our job is to get the money out to you, given legislative guidelines that we get as easily as possible. And we try to succeed in that as best we can. And mostly I feel we do a great job. However, that being said, we'd always love to hear from anybody on this call or others. And I know my team would be happy to come back whenever requested to provide information on anything else that's going on.
All right. Well, I really appreciate that, Chris, and Fumi and Ed, appreciate you guys being here as well. You know, you guys are a terrific partner for us, and we really appreciate the communication that we get. You know, sometimes I know we can be a little whiny. I know that I'm particularly fall into that camp. I'll tell you anytime that, you know, members tell me that they're having a problem, and we really appreciate that you guys listen and you do what you can. We know it's not always up to you. Sometimes it's the federal government, sometimes it's the legislature, and you know, you're just administering the programs the way that they're laid out. And we always try and remind our members of that. But you guys are a terrific partner, and just, you know, seeing some of the funding that we've been able to get through a variety of different programs for local government, it's just been terrific to see. So thank you so much for taking the time, all of you, today to talk with us. We really appreciate it, and look forward to, you know, working together here in the special session, the next long session, and beyond. So very much appreciate you guys taking the time today.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We had great attendance. I think we had, gosh, 180 people maybe at one point, something like that. Really appreciate everybody tuning in and you know, seeing what you can do for your community. I really respect the work that the cities do. I've been just blown away by what you guys do for your local businesses. I hear stories all the time about elected officials getting out there with door knockers, making sure that their businesses were aware of the small business assistance programs that they had stood up. And we definitely noticed that stuff. And so really appreciate it. Just a reminder, December 30th, the absolute drop dead deadline for spending your CRF money. Get that money out the door, or it is going back to the state. And that's the last thing we want to see happen. If you have concerns about spending your CRF money, contact me. We can find a way for you to get to use that money. So again, really appreciate all your time, and have a happy Friday and very happy holidays. And there's Mike. So we really, you know, really appreciate you guys tuning in today. Thank you very much, and take care.